So right now in the Autofusion project, every day as I'm working on the car, I have a few goals and I know in my mind what the next few things are. I don't try to take my focus on thinking about the steps that are way down the road, as I want to focus on what's in front of me right now. So what we have going on today is I want to knock out a few things. I have to finish wrapping up the entire bag kit that's running all the lines, and all of the lines include one per bag. We have the drain valves, and then we also have all of the gauge lines that need to be ran. Also, I need to run a line for my air horn, because you cannot have airbags, air tank, and the entire system without having an air horn in your truck. Just can't do that. So we got to knock out all those things, and we are going to get started doing that right now.
And now, you're watching the realization that is, if you go boating with billionaires, you could skip taking a shower because you'll eventually wash up on shore channel of YouTube. Welcome to BodeVision.
So what is up, and welcome, and thank you so much for joining me yet again on another video. As I mentioned before the intro, we have all those things we got to knock out. I also have to secure the fuel tank for the final time. It was just held on by some ratchet straps as it was attached to the old floor, and all of the old floor is cut out of here and gone, obviously, so that needs to be done. I just need to get that knocked out because I can't air up and down the car if the fuel cell or fuel tank cannot come with it. So all those lines are pretty much set up. I'll get into it a little bit later on how exactly I set up all my valves. So if you're doing a budget air system, you could do the same thing. Now keep in mind, you can run air management and have manifolds and do all of that stuff. It's a lot more expensive and it's a lot more intuitive. You know, you can get a lot more control out of it. Or if you're a cheap person like I am, you can run it this way. So what I got going on right now in this second is I have my air horn mounted over here. I wanted to put it under the hood, but I didn't have much room for it. So this entire kit, I bought it brand new off of Marketplace. Now, it was sitting around in the guy's garage for quite a while, but it had never been used, so it was actually pretty good for me because I spent easily half of what I would have spent if I were to get anything else. So this, I'm just gonna run it. I got a little bit to spare, so I'm just gonna get it cut off so that way I can work with it. And this is really the last line that I need to run. I of course don't want to waste a bunch of it, but also I need to kind of trim it back so that way I can work with it. And with this air line, you definitely do not want to cut it with dikes or anything. I found the best way to do it is just get a fresh razor blade, and that'll cut it really nice and clean. You don't want to use a dikes because you don't want to crush it. So I got my line right here. I'm going to shoot past the horn and then make a U-turn with a little bit of slack in my line so that way I can make this sweeping pretty much 270. So with these fittings, what I found to work best is I tighten them by hand as tight as I can get them. Then I will make a mark with a Sharpie. So I got my mark on top. Then I will do an additional 1.5 to 2 rotations depending on what I'm feeling. So that's that line. It came around one time, and then now it's at the bottom right there. So we got my power supply right here. We also have the electric solenoid or valve. I'm just going to go ahead and put these gator clips on there. When this sees 12 volts, it's going to open up, allowing all of the air from inside the tank to go straight to the horn. So I'm just going to blip it really quick because I don't want to be too loud. God damn. That was crazy loud. So I guess it works. Alright, so at this point we have the fuel tank in there and it is secured nicely. It's sitting the same exact way that it was sitting in the Lincoln Towncar, except the floor is where everything was bolted to without the floor being there. Without the floor being in there, I had to weld in a couple of bars just to add some extra support. Now, speaking of welding, this is really exciting. One thing about this project, as you can see if you know a lot about welding, I have all kinds of TIG stuff right there, a new MIG gun, some ground straps, and I have two machines right here. I was doing a lot of research on welders because I wanted to step up my game on this project, and there was one clear answer that I kept coming back to, and that's the HTP welder. I got the HTP TIG machine right here, and then the HTP Pro Pulse 220 MIG right there. With the Autofusion series, I want to really elevate my welding to the next level, and also I wanted to let you know, so this is the Autofusion series as I am auto-fusioning. That's kind of the word that we made up for what exactly I'm doing. But this truck, the name for this truck, this is going to be called the Slam Box because it is going to be on the ground. We are going to have the utility boxes in the back for the bed. So I think Slam Box is really appropriate because I'm going to want to do like old school door logos. I have a whole logo for this truck and everything that represents the Slam Box. That's what it is. So let me know what you think about that. So now I got the welder set up and I want to shift gears into getting the wiring all set up for the bag. Since we have them all plumbed 100%, but it makes more sense to go ahead and rip off the body, and then when the body's off, I'll be able to prep all of those metal surfaces that I'm going to have to be merging together. Like anywhere that's relatively close, I'll just weld it right together. Anywhere that I need to fill in a gap, I will just add some sheet metal. All of that metal that I'm going to be welded on, like I said, has to be prepped. So I just want to go ahead and get the body out of here. So we're going to air it up, and I'm just going to use my little 12-volt power supply that we used for my horn a second ago. Get the car aired up so we can move it, and then I think we'll lower it a little bit so that way I don't have to lift the cab as high off the ground, because that seems to make the most sense. So I want to get the car up off the ground, and this is going to be running the same exact way that I did the horn. This air is coming from my shop since the actual compressor is not wired up. I just have 12 volts sitting at the solenoid. Hit the switch. We're going to go ahead and raise the front. Let's see, I also have my gauge right here for the front. So we're sitting at about 90 PSI, and this is going through my shop's 90 PSI regulator. So the front is up. Let's go up with the rear now. The rear jumps quick just because there's no weight over here. But by the time the box goes on, it'll probably take a little longer. And rear, we are at 75, 80, 85, 90. All right. All right, first drive on air. Now keep in mind, I don't have any kind of controls because we want to get the cab off before we can do those controls, but everything's looking good. What we got to do, and what I really want to do now that the car is kind of out, I want to air it out for the very first time. I mean, we've had it low in the shop, but you need to be able to stand back and take a really good look at it as you air it out. So we're just doing the same thing with my power right here. All right, so that's good. All right, let's get this body ripped off. Alright, so as you can see, we got the cab ripped off. So that's going to make it so much easier for us to finish up all of the wiring and all of the lines that have to go to the gauges, which are right there. Let me show you how it looks thus far. So we have all my air lines coming this way. Now some of them break off and go in different directions, but we have them diving up over there, coming around. Now we have my 3 air lines. One is for the tank, that's the one with the blue tape on it. The other one's for front, the other one is for rear, so that's those 3. Then we also have the lights for the back of the gauge. Now if I just go right here, turn on the lights, I just stole that from where this, because the cigarette lighter was right there, but there was a little ring around the cigarette lighter, so that's all good. That comes on when you turn the lights on, and that's how I want my gauges to work. So I'm gonna go ahead, finish running these lines into the back of the gauge, putting the bulbs in the back of the gauge. And then we also got our old school controller for the actual bags themselves. Gauges done 100%. It looks really nice right up in there. Everything's tucked in, and as you can see, when I turn the lights on, they come on just like they're supposed to, so that's looking good. So the next thing that we want to get into is doing all of the wiring for the individual valves themselves. Everything that we've been doing, I've just been using that little power converter or jump box or whatever you'd want to call it. So we have this entire harness right here. This is every single wire that we are going to need to make this happen, and we are going to make this look as professional as you could possibly make it look. Like if you got a standalone harness, this is going to look just as good, if not better, as any of that mill spec stuff, even though it's not technically mill spec. But either way, I'll show you exactly how we make it happen, and it's gonna look damn good. Actually want to draw out how I build my harness to look as good as it looks. So I like working with this stuff. I just have this in a couple different sizes. This is 3/8, this is half, and then I also have really small that I didn't end up using. This is just quarter right here. If I had a single wire that I wanted to run a long way, I would just go ahead and hit the quarter on it, but I didn't end up actually using it. So let me kind of draw out how I use the loom to make it look as good as I can possibly make it. So for this drawing and demonstration, the wiring is going to be starting at the front of the car and working its way towards the back of the car. I'm just going to use 4 wires so that way it's easier for us to understand what exactly is going on, and 2 of the wires we want them to break off in a different direction. So that break is going to be just about right here. So each one of these lines would be a wire. So then I have my loom right here, and the loom is going to end about a little bit past that breakup point. So this is going to be the largest loom right here. But on my two wires that continue off, I want to keep them together, so they're going to get a smaller loom of their own, but that smaller loom is going to tuck back into the bigger loom, and this can continue on infinitely. Then the continuation loom, now keep in mind it could be just these two wires, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever you want to do. That loom is also going to come into the main loom. So this can continue on, and then we have the main loom, and then we bring in a piece of heat shrink right here that's going to eventually squeeze everything together. So you are going to have an intersection. It's almost going to look like this in the end, just a shape like that, and you can have as many of those as you want for your harness. So you could have one of these per valve, one of these per fuel injector, one of these per whatever the hell you want to do, but that's how it looks. Now also another thing that I actually had to do with mine is I had to run a separate harness for the grounds, just because of that's how we calculated it. But either way, I took some of this sleeve right here, which is open-ended, so the two harnesses were tied together with a one larger sleeve that had the opening slit in it, and it looks really good, nice and clean. I try to use as little electrical tape as possible, just because of how nasty the electrical tape eventually becomes. I don't like dealing with that stuff. So let's go ahead and take a look at my stuff 90% of the way there. Keep in mind the compressor is going to go on the floor, so it's going to be relocated. It's just kind of sitting there right now, and I have to test everything for the first time. Make sure the electrical is done correctly, make sure everything is receiving a proper ground, and make sure the tank and everything is 100% holding pressure. And we got to check those gauges, man. This is really exciting stuff to get to this point of this project. So as you can see, that main harness comes around. It ended up being a little bit too long right there, but that's okay, it's all good. Now keep in mind, with my project and my build, I'm doing a lot of this stuff from scratch, so I'm just using the basic components for an air ride system, some of the most simple stuff. Now keep in mind, if you wanted to spend a little bit more money, you wouldn't have to do all of this extra work, because you can go out and buy a specific kit for your car and just run everything and plug it in, and that should work just fine. But that's not as fun as running everything and doing all of the wiring from scratch. Alright, so here's the moment of truth. Let's see if everything turns out. Now I actually did fill up my tank a little bit with my shop air, just so that way my pump doesn't have to work so hard the very first time. But as soon as I plug this in, that's the compressor pumping. Let me make sure nothing's leaking. We are sitting at about 100 PSI. My shop will only fill it up to 90 because of my 90 PSI regulator that I have. So let's see. Once it shuts off at about 200, we'll make the car dance. All right. 205 on the gauge, it shut off. It's supposed to shut off at 200, but either way, if it shuts off, I don't care. So what I want to do is I want to measure how much lift I actually have, so long as it's working. I'm kind of doing two things at once here. So right now the frame is 4 inches off of the ground. On the frame, let's go ahead and make sure my switch panel works to begin with. So we got the front. God dang. And I don't got shocks on the front yet. I'm going to have to custom place them next to the A-arm, which is fine. So that's 100 PSI at the front. Let's see what we get going on for the back. That's 100 PSI for the back. That's my maximum height. And now my number before was 4 inches. So we have 6 1/4 inches of lift, which is pretty good. So the side of the truck at max height is going to be 6 1/4 inches off the ground. I would imagine my ride height is probably going to be maybe 4 inches off the ground. And then if I have a really big obstacle that I need to get over, or if I just want to air it up completely, that's what I'll do. So everything's working. So when I bought this kit on Marketplace, it just came with 1 compressor. I know most guys are running 2 compressors, so I just wanted to see what it would be like, how long the actual thing has to run for, and see if I'm okay with it. If not, I'll just throw another one on there and it's all good. So what I want to do, I just want to monitor my gauges See if I'm losing air anywhere. The back was at 100. It seemed to go down a little bit, or I just didn't hit it all the way. If I have a small leak, I will have to chase that, which is no problem. I didn't expect it to be perfect on the very first time out. But let's see, man. Everything looks good. And you know what? Just thinking about it, the cool thing about a car on air is when you lay it out. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're gonna drop the and we are aired out. Really good stuff. So as far as this video goes, we made a lot of progress. The bags are 100% done. I need to start prepping the metal so that way we can put the cab back on for the final time and then merge the cab to this floor so that way we will never have to take it off again. The support bars inside will need to be cut out so we can put the seat in once and for all, and there's just going to be a lot more progress on the way. So let me know what you guys think of everything thus far. Let me know what you think of my wiring, my air lines, this cheap system that we made work because we want to save money, but even if you want to save money and you do something really nice, it can still look good. So thank you so much for watching. Like this video, comment, subscribe, do all this stuff. You know what it is, YouTube. I'll see you on the next one. I'm out.